All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office, or actually, it's not office hours. Sorry. We are here for our build review show today. So, our 5 p.m. Eastern build review show kicking off here. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Excited to review some users' builds from yesterday. If anybody tuning in wants to have their build reviewed live on stream here, drop their username in the office hours channel in Discord. I can add you to the queue. So right now we have 2 people signed up for today, and we will start off with them and then see where we go. So let's get SaberSim pulled up here and let's get into reviewing some users' builds. Should be a fun one. So first person here is going to be none other than In It to Bink It. And let's get him up on the screen here. All right. 1 second. All right. So we are here logged in as In It to Bink It, reviewing his builds from yesterday. Let's go back to the 8th and let's go to the main slate. And let's see how everything was looking. So again here, notice right off the bat, splitting action right across early and main here. You know, these 2 slates aren't going to share games, so plenty of action there. Playing a lot of DFS actually, right? If he's actually like playing all of these slates, League of Legends, Golf Showdown, CS2, tennis, right? Like a ton of action across all of these if he is indeed playing all of them. So I like getting spread out there. Jump over to the contest tab. All right. So this is maybe something that we don't talk about a bunch here, but there are a lot of good satellites in the lobby, especially these like cross sport satellites, you know, baseball satellite to a tennis competition or things like that are like typically where you're going to find the most overlay. So if you are somebody who, you know, is actively playing tennis, you know, yeah, like definitely allocate a portion of your bankroll to those satellite contests to get access to those higher dollar contests in a sport that you're also playing. So I think that the satellites working all of these in here is totally great. Again, we see more cross sport between the between baseball and UFC here, MLB and NFL. So I think it's totally cool to mix these in here. And then, you know, these are like very, very low dollar, right? $1, 25 cents, 10 cents, right? So this is all good stuff. All right, let's sort maybe by fee here. So playing the maxing out the mega mini max here. I don't really see that he's playing anything else. So I'm not sure, you know, if it here has access, or yeah, he has to have access to lower stakes contests if he's playing all of these satellites. So I would say, you know, don't forget to mix in some of these other contests, right? This $3 150 max, you know, it's an interesting contest, right? Because it's like, oh, hey, you know, this is a 150 max with like a bigger price of first, and you know, you get access to, you know, 150 max at like a better cost, right? But because the prize pool is, you know, 50K, that means everyone in the lobby has access to this contest, right? So I think you end up with a lot of maxers in this contest, and this contest ends up ultimately being pretty sharp, right? So like the way we were talking about comparing ROIs across contests between like the solo shot, the quarter, the mini max, you know, you could also do that here, right? So I like all the satellite play. Don't forget to play some GPPs that are also single entry and 3 max as well. You know, getting the $1, the $3, the $5, get in the $5 single, the $12 single, all of those other good contests as well. So don't forget those. All right. So let's jump in here and look at how his lineups graded out. And I'm going to set a filter for 150. going to sort by sim ROI. So this is kind of exactly what I was talking about, right? Basically, like everyone who's maxing the $15 is also maxing this, but then there are going to be users who aren't maxing that out that are maxing this out, right? Like imagine you're somebody putting, 15 lineups in the 150 max. Well, you can easily max this contest out, right? Because that's like 750 versus 450 in entry fees. Or if you're entering 30 lineups in the 150, now you're maxing this out, right? So this contest ends up with a lot of maxers and ends up being like pretty sharp. So that's why we see like, hey, the highest sim ROI here is about 8%. And in it here is in the top 15 sim ROIers, but he's neutral, right? Like comparatively, if I scroll down, you're going to see, a lot more negative sim ROI people than positive. I'd say like 25% of the people who max this are positive and 75% of the people who max this are negative, like according to what we're seeing here, right? So, you could see like, okay, hey, he has 0% sim ROI, but like all things considered, this isn't a terrible number, right? So let's just like preface this by like, hey, he is not doing something totally wrong. It's just a little bit lower edge contest. So let's compare here and see, what we can see to help him get up to a little bit higher sim ROI. Salary looks fine. Average dupes look fine. Sim average score looks fine. This is going to be one of those where you got to go deeper and, go zone in on his 150. Spend some time here looking at sim ROIs. Say, hey, what do my lowest sim ROI lineups look like? And what do they look like compared to my highest? And how can I avoid, getting to some of these lineups in the future, right? To ultimately raise that sim ROI. So like, that's what I would be spending my time doing here, right? Like imagine he cuts out this minus 54% sim ROI lineup. That's going to have a huge effect on his set, right? There are a number of lineups here and we actually see a massive jump, right? So let's actually look at this. So his worst 4 sim ROI lineups, negative 54%, negative 53, negative 50, negative 46, and then it jumps down to negative 23. Now, if he could just spend time figuring out, hey, how do I avoid these 4 negative 46% to negative 54% sim ROI lineups, just simply getting rid of these is going to elevate the average sim ROI of his entire portfolio. So like that is something that I would recommend spending time doing. Like, okay, what went wrong here? What decisions did I make? Why did this end up so badly? And like, if you can trial your error your way, if you can trial and error your way into figuring out how to avoid such high negative sim ROI lineups, you will probably go even going from 0% sim ROI to 4% makes you a top 5 sim ROIer in this contest. And it's probably just a very, very small adjustment there. Paying attention to something. It actually looks like Javi Baez didn't start. And it looks like you ended up with 4 lineups that had him. So maybe they were in a late game and you had trouble swapping off of him. I'm not 100% sure. I know we had some issues with this game, but I know that there were like 2 games available that were like in the night slate to possibly like swap off here. But like that seems to kind of be it. So, he was a last minute scratch. That sucks. And he's super low salary too, 2,300. So probably weren't like great swap options, but okay. Take that into account, right? You get rid of those 4 lineups, his sim ROI probably comes up here, right? And it ends up being closer to like 3%, 4%, which makes him like one of the top 5 sim ROIers, right? But let's say that, he was in, right? Let's assume that Javi Baez is in. you would want for anybody else watching, you would want to look at this and say, okay, what is so wrong about these four lineups? What is so different? What is so wrong? And how can I avoid that in the future? And something like that is actually going to benefit you a ton in this situation. So that's what I would be trying to do. But super unfortunate last minute scratch there. All right, let's jump into this build, see what we can see. Okay. So we have a mini max risk adjusted ROI greater than 0. We have a dupes less than 1. And then we have a self sim risk adjusted ROI. So the only thing I might change here, and this is like my preference, is I prefer to use ROI over risk adjusted ROI when doing these contest sim filters. And the reason is that, these numbers are going to be different, right? We look at this contest sim here, sim ROI 163%, risk adjusted ROI 353%, right? The risk adjusted ROI calculation isn't directly from the sims, but we needed a way to kind of display that number for users in a way that was relative and kind of made sense here. So the sim ROI like literally comes from calculating, okay, how much money did this lineup win? Divide it by the total entry fees for this lineup across 100K sample, right? Like that is a very, very straight mathematical problem. The risk adjusted ROI works a little bit differently, which is why these values are different. So I like to just use sim ROI greater than 0. So if I'm going to make a recommendation, that is one thing I would change here is the lineup filters, switch them from ROI to just ROI, unless you're doing it for some specific reason. I think the dupes one is fine. Just, trying to take into account a uniqueness here and like not have, 20 lineups randomly duplicated once. I think that's fine to do. So don't see a problem with that, especially, I think a lot more lineups I've been seeing like users have more duped lineups than like I imagined. And like even average dupes is still 0, but they'll have like, 20, 30 lineups with at least one dupe. And it's like, like kind of interesting there. So I like the added step of taking that into account. All right. Doesn't look like he's using any min uniques in this build, but he got to like a pretty diverse set of lineups. So, it's possible he just determined like he didn't need it. And I think that's okay, right? Just said like, hey, I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing. I'm just gonna leave it. That might just be like a risk thing, right? So I think it's okay to do that. No major adjustments, minimax exposure wise on batters, pitchers, or teams here. Letting the builder do what it does here across his 150 set stack type wise. Most of his stacks are like at least a 4 stack. Any of these like 3 stacks or less, or like only a few lineups in the pool here. So don't see anything crazy there. Got a player pool filter. Show players with projection greater than 1 just to get rid of the players with 0 so he doesn't have to look at them. And then projection greater than 10 for pitchers. I think that's fine, right? I think that's totally okay. So he's like basically like, hey, I don't want to look at the relievers. If anybody's on like some pitch limit, only going to go like 3-4 innings, I don't really want to see them either. And if they're super low, like just get them out of here. Curating your pool like that, I think is totally okay. So I'm not seeing a ton here that is like, red flag, like anything going off here for me. Even, trusting the builder to build good lineups, even if the salary is lower, and going minimum salary 0 here. And we saw that it wasn't really affecting his sim average score, right? His sim average score looked very in line with a lot of the top sets, even though he's allowing the builder to go as low as it wants on the salary spec. the Javi Baez news, super unfortunate. But if you're in a spot where it's like, I'm right there, I don't know how to really take my set any higher, look at your negative sim ROI lineups, try and figure out what you're doing wrong, or what is wrong with those specific lineups. Try and make, less of those, try and get less of those in your set here. And then also, mix in some of those other contests, right? The single entry and 3 max GPPs, some of those lower stakes 20 maxes to go along with your 150 max are all good things to do. So good job. All right. Good stuff there. Let's jump into our next person here. All righty. Just about there. And let's get over to the main slate and let's get him up on the big board. So we're going to be looking at Raf LP again here. Only other person that signed up today. And let's start in the contest tab. So starting to look a little familiar, right? We've reviewed him a couple days in a row here, or like 3 times this week, which is like totally fine, right? Contest selection still looking really solid. Really solid. Like, this is a very good balance here. All right. Let's jump into the solo shot here. Just usually try to go with like the biggest prize pool contest. And something with a lot of entries. Okay, filter for 20. Sim ROI. Okay, so I'm almost positive that last time we saw Raf, he was at about like 7% sim ROI, somewhere around like 7 to 10. Now, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that's where he was. Now I'm seeing him at 15, 16, right? That's good, right? He's making adjustments, doing something that is taking him from 7 to 10 up to 15 to 16, right? And the more that he keeps iterating, the more that he keeps making these micro adjustments, he's going to see those percentages tick up, right? That's exactly what we're looking to do. It's putting him right in the top range of like 10 to 15, right? In the top users as far as sim ROI. So he's right in that range, continuing to get better. And let's see what we see. Salary looks fine. Dupes look fine. This all looks okay, right? So again, this is going to be another one. Like, hey, he's doing a lot of the right things already. There's nothing glaringly wrong. He's positive sim ROI. He's in the top 10 to 15% here. So, how do we get better, right? And we gotta dig deeper. So let's go look at his set. A couple comments. I didn't have any chance to make stands yesterday with the late time, but I think I would have showed up slightly lower as I wanted to X Cortez, but didn't want a chance. Missing locks, I had to go quick with minimal filtering. Okay, so let's jump in here and let's see what some of these lineups look like. So this is like a really good sign, right? When his lowest lineup is like negative 9% sim ROI, that tells you like at no point here did he make some like egregious error with his lineups, right? And like, hey, he was lucky enough to not have any Javi Baez, right? Is like kind of what we're saying. But But like even going back to, in its lineups, like, in that 150 max, like, hey, there was like a minus 23%, like minus something else. Like he might even be able to learn something from studying those lineups that had all projected players. But here, negative 9%, negative 8%, negative 7, right? And then it jumps to like negative 3. Okay. So it's like, what is so different about the negative 7, negative 8, negative 9.9, like almost 10 here, compared to this like negative 2? Why is there a big jump between these lineups? And maybe if we, look at these, maybe we'll notice something, right? And then if we can get rid of these 3 lineups, then that's going to help him out a lot. Interesting. So the first thing that really stands out to me is this negative 10 sim ROI lineup is really, really low projected, 85.8. Even the next lowest sim ROI is 94.5. The next lowest is 91.6. And then the negative 3% is 90.6, right? So like, 85 looks really, really low. But the only thing I would say that makes me nervous about drawing that conclusion specifically is that we see this Angels lineup over here that's positive 8.9% sim ROI that has an 86.9 projection. So it's like, so why does this lineup grade out positive versus the other lineup that grades out negative? And I would spend time analyzing these 2 lineups and saying, okay, what is so different about this 86.9 projected lineup that grades out 9% positive versus the 85.8% that grades out negative 10%, right? So sometimes it's finding a similar lineup and figuring out what's going on there, right? So like what I notice is this is a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stack, right? So top to middle of the order correlated with the pitcher for like a win bonus. And then it has like this 3, 4 secondary stack of a chalky team. What I notice in the bad lineup is that the team that is the 5 stack is medium projected, but very low owned. And it has a lot of low order hitters. So it's a 2, 3, 4, 6, 8. No, not really. I mean, you're swapping out the 5 hitter for the 8 hitter here. And you're still using a lot of salary. Because like, okay, this is basically what I'm doing in my head. Okay, let's look at the ownership. Like, let's go like right to left. It's like, okay, what are the ownership differences, right? Okay, Kremer is like 11%. Anderson's like 6. Gibson's kind of chalky at like 34. Gosman is like 18. So I'm not sure like the playing Gibson with the Cardinal stack here gets you a lot of like extra points because Gibson's like so high owned already. But playing Anderson with the Angels, who's 6% owned, when he wins the game and gets the win bonus, I think that helps him a lot more than somebody like Gibson. So like, okay, correlation with a low owned pitcher seems to be a little bit better. And these these are my thoughts, right? This is what I'm thinking. This is how I'm trying to make sense of it. I'm not saying that like, hey, you should just always with a 5 stack of his team, right? I'm not saying that, but I would like to see if that's true, right? I would like to take this thought and see how it works on other lineups, on future lineups, on things like that. Like, hey, is that something that actually helps us sim ROI wise here and like go analyze more lineups. And maybe I flip this, right? Maybe I flip this from worst sim ROI lineups to best sim ROI lineups and see if I actually notice that. That would be something that I would want to do, right? And then next thing that I would be looking at is kind of just like the projection of the players in this stack, right? So it's like, okay, 7.5, 6.7, 7.3, 6.95, 6.44. You know, it looks like the Cardinals batters kind of just project better, which is interesting to say the least, than the Angels do. And their ownership is lower, right? Like Cardinals are all like Burleson 7.8. Everyone else is like 5 or 6, 3. And the Angels are like 5, 5, 12, 4, 8. So that's kind of interesting. That lineup uses a lot of salary. The sum ownerships are really, really close. And then this lineup is a 5-3 stack with a 1-3-9. And this other lineup is a 3-4 with a one-off here. But all of those players are projected for almost 8 points here, 7.93, 8.4, 8.81. And then the secondary stack on the bad lineup is like 7.13, 7.58, and then one player above 8, right? So kind of what I'm seeing, right, is like this Angels lineup, you know, the 5 stack might not project the best, but the correlation between the players and the pitcher make up for the poor projection. And then we get projection back by going with this 3-4 stack of the chalkier hitters, right? 17% and 25% at good projection levels with a one-off who is decently projected as well, right? I think that's kind of a takeaway here for me. It's like, okay, if you're going to play the lowest team total, if you're going to stack the lowest team total of the day in the Angels, you know, maybe you shouldn't 3 stack like a middling team with them. And maybe you should try and go and get some hitters that are projected where maybe those teams have a higher run total, right? Like that's what I'm seeing, right? Seeing the low Angels 5 stack, low projected Angels 5 stack with like some hitters where their teams are projected 5.1 runs, 5.4 runs. You know, that's kind of the only thing that glaringly, when I compare these two lineups, negative 10% sim ROI to about positive 10% sim ROI, a 20% swing, those are the biggest things standing out to me as why the Angel stack does good and why the Cardinal stack does bad. So I would be on the lookout for more lineups like that. You know, you could spend time in your 20 lineups, in your 150 and however many lineups, trying to identify that. Like, hey, if I see, you know, a lineup like this and like I kind of want to go further down the rabbit hole, maybe I need to look at my top positive sim ROI lineups and see if this is actually like a trend and if this is something that I'm actually seeing on a broader spectrum. And if you don't have a lot of lineups like this, look tomorrow, look the next day, right? Keep comparing, keep trying to figure out what the differences are, where you can figure out how to avoid some of those other lineups and just inherently raise your sim ROI. So like, you know, it's not always clear, I think is an important thing here, right? It can be murky. Like it's murky for me. And, you know, it might be murky for you guys as well, but like, you're going to have to trial and error. You're going to have to try and make some assumptions and put them into practice and see if that was true or if it was wrong or if it didn't matter. And that is just the constant process of like evolving and trying to get better. So hope that helps you guys. You know, it can be tough. It can be tough to figure out these things sometimes. All right. That was our last person who signed up here today that I really wanted to go over. You know, we spent a lot of time looking at Ralph's builds and things. I doubt he's doing too much different, but I think this was actually like a really good exercise for us to go through. Neil said, "Hey Andrew, it's been so helpful watching you review other users' builds. Could you please review yours from yesterday? I bet I can learn a lot from you." I'm gonna have to, you know, play some major DFS action here, and I don't know, maybe we need to get like Jordan on the show to review my lineups, right? I feel really weird like reviewing my own because I'm like, yeah, everything I did was good, and you know, I'm doing it because I think it's the right thing to do, right? So kind of gets weird. Maybe I can get Jordan to review my lineups or something like that. But good idea, you know, to have my lineups reviewed sometime here. We'll try and work it in. But appreciate you guys tuning in. I will be back here tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern for our Saturday office hours show. And then the build review show will come back on Monday. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Good luck this weekend in your DFS contest. And until we chat again, thank you. Take care. Bye.